Hello, good afternoon and welcome along to this webinar. My name is Sammy. I'm here today to sort of host. I don't really know that much about speed and security. I've got two experts with me and I'm going to bring them along in now. This webinar is on behalf of C Learning and we're hoping we've got lots of tips to share. So I'm going to bring in Dave and I'm going to bring in Pete. And these are my friends and colleagues and they are the absolute experts. When I have that question that I don't know the answer to, which is pretty much most days, these are the two people that I ask. But I'm going to do that awful cringy thing now and I'm going to read their bios. So bear with me, lads. Hold on to your seats. So Dave first, he's the Strategic IT Director for the Watergrove Trust. He's a Google Certified Innovator for London 19. Not the best cohort. He's an Administrator Trainer, Educator Level 2 and COP Ambassador. Strong believer in the use that ICT should be an enabler to be good quality teaching and learning. And he's really proud to have been named the EduFuturist Network Manager of the Year in 2019 and 2021. And he should be. Now, his rival for that award is Peter Horner. And Peter is a Google Certified Trainer Innovator from VIA 20, a very good cohort. And he's 20 years experience of working in IT and education. And as the IT Manager and Digital Learning Leader at Barton Peveril Sixth Form College, he provides strategic leadership for the ongoing development and use of education technology. He's also recently completed his MSc IT, where his research explored mobile learning. So welcome both Dave and Peter.
Thanks, Sammy. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Sammy, and thanks for a lovely introduction.
And I think, Dave, as well, you didn't put in your bio, but you do have a super duper podcast with me of learning, where you try and combine the pedagogy and the IT and where the two worlds meet.
I certainly try. It's now into its third series and going strong. And yeah, we really enjoy learning through that because that's what I get from it. I learn from my guests. Apologies if you're getting a lot of background noise from my colleagues. They're on the way out for lunch, so hopefully that'll quieten down now. But yeah, that's one of the other things I need to learn, how to get a quieter space to appear on things like this.
No, it'll be absolutely fun. We all recognise that we're working in education live and things will happen. So this whole event was sparked from a little tweet that I put out. Now, when you put Peter's name into Twitter, the first thing that comes up is Chromebooks, because Peter absolutely loves Chromebooks. And Peter's got a training guide, and I'll pop that link into the chat as well for Chromebooks. But Peter, what were your thoughts behind making that? And I'd see it being retweeted all the time, so you must see a lot of people using it.
Yeah, so the reason I made it was a couple of years ago during lockdown, we decided to switch all of our teachers onto Chromebooks. So I made this training guide. It includes basic Chromebook tips for helpful keyboard shortcuts, but also tips around using Chromebooks with students, apps which work really well on Chromebooks in the classroom. And yeah, like anything I make, I think if our staff find it useful, other people are going to find it useful too. So I just chuck it out on Twitter as well and share.
Awesome, yeah, and you are very much the share of Chromebooks. And last night, your knowledge was picked. Your brain of knowledge of the best Chromebooks on the market was picked as well by a friend of mine who wanted to know your thoughts about Chromebooks. So I'm really pleased you're here today because genuinely, when you put your name into Twitter, the first thing that comes up is Chromebooks. So you're perfect. You're perfect to be here today. Okay, so we'll get into the serious discussion. Lads, with me, it's never very serious, but we'll start off with the opening question because we did do some prep for this. But I think sometimes people think about the experience on a Chromebook being significantly different to another device, and that could be a Mac and it could be a Windows device. But I'm interested because we've got different age ranges here between where you both work. How do your students find the experience on a Chromebook? Dave, we'll come to you first.
Okay, thanks, Sammy. For me, there's two real key points here. And firstly, it's the speed at which the Chromebooks are ready for our students to use. They're so much faster than our old laptops right now. I know that laptop technology has moved on leaps and bounds perhaps since we were first using them, but we used to have a massive issue with petty vandalism, with students picking keys off keyboards and scratching inappropriate things into screens and so on and so forth. And that literally stopped overnight when we introduced Chromebooks. And we put that down very much to the speed of login, because instead of sitting there waiting for the laptop to boot up its operating system, and then to find the Wi-Fi connection, and then to join the domain, and then to pull down the profile when the student had logged in. You know, that was taking, even when we optimized it, it was taking 2-3 minutes really on an average login. Chromebooks, they're literally from opening the lid to being logged on, and even more pertinently logged into their cloud environment so they've got access to the documents. It's no more than 30 seconds. So the devil makes work for idle hands, and the hands weren't idle at that point. So it was so much more fit for the learning environment. The second thing I think is that there's so much less to distract them. Every school will have its resident wannabe hackers who like to dig around in the operating system and find ways of getting around security systems. With Chromebooks, there's just not that much there for them to play around with. So it really took away some distractions. The fact that also that they can't install some nefarious software that they've managed to smuggle in somehow, because even when we lock things down on a laptop, there's plenty of guides out there on the internet as to how to bypass some of these things. So that real restriction on what they can and can't access on there. Yes, there's still the internet, and yes, the internet is a wealth of distractions, but that's far more visible to your teacher in the classroom when they're able to see what sites are being visited, and of course it's all audited there. So those are the two main things for us: the speed at which they're up and running and the lack of distraction. And what that translates to in reality is just so much more learning time available to them. So any lesson which is using IT is now predominantly filled with the learning rather than filled with the logging on and the distractions and the issues and the obstacles that we used to have beforehand.
Fascinating. I always learn something. I think that petty vandalism is not something I'd encountered, and I find that absolutely fascinating. Yeah, idle hands waiting for that to log up. And I say this to my students all the time: if it takes a long time to load up, then you're going to be picking your phone up or something else, and you're already distracted, and you're forgetting what you were on to do the work. So I try and encourage my students to use their Chromebooks whenever possible, rather than their phones as well, to try and get them to be in their learning zone a lot quicker. So yeah, completely with you on that. Peter, you've got slightly older students at the sixth form college. How do your students find the experience on a Chromebook?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with David. I think what really shines through on Chromebooks is kind of Google's focus on education when they designed Chrome OS and all kind of the management tools in the background. But yeah, I think for us, it's changed over the years. I think we first did Chromebooks back in 2014, and they were still quite new. So it was a new device to many people, and initially, it was a little bit of a learning curve. Only a little one, because Chromebooks are really easy to use. But as the years gone on, we've got more and more secondary schools now all using Chromebooks. So that's gotten a lot easier. So now our students are arriving and they're familiar with Chrome OS. They pick it up much easier. I think the other big change for us is, I'd say about 5 years ago, we decided to only get touchscreen Chromebooks, and I think our students find them a lot more intuitive to use. And a touchscreen Chromebook's only, I think, another £10 or £20 on top of the normal price, and I think that has been a good decision because it makes it a bit more intuitive to use, and it opens up some different use cases as well in the classroom.
Yeah, I think that touchscreen makes things a bit more fluid. I teach maths, so a touchscreen is pretty much essential. I did assessments this week. Was it last week? I lose the weeks. And I did them fully on Jamboard on touchscreens. And I thought that's just going to be the easiest way to get that handwritten maths that I need. Because I've got adult students who are returning to education. It's like you and I returning to education at this age and stage in our lives. It's going to take a while to get used to those habits. And I think the intuitive nature of it, that the fact they could just click that button and be like, oh, I can just write on this. This is amazing. I don't need to have anything special to be able to do this. I think really made a difference to them and made that assessment process a bit easier. I'm going to ask Peter, if you got Chromebooks in 2014, I'm going to imagine that they maybe weren't where they are now. Did any staff were like, no, these are rubbish and I don't want to use them, and have they now switched on to them? Have you found that at all?
So when we first started Chromebooks, it was just for students. And it's interesting, yeah, because we started off Google with Google in our humanities department, and we just got 12 Chromebooks for a small project, and within a year it just grew organically from there. And a year later, we had, I think, several hundred across many departments, and it kind of took off like wildfire, really.
I think
what people latched onto is just for simplicity.
Yeah, and completely. And although I don't teach in primary, I have primary age children, and the fact that, and I know Peter, our children are very similar ages, and I know that they can do it independently, and it's such a thing at that age it's that they can do something independently and they don't need help, and that's why it takes off, because if it can work in the hands of a small child, then it can work in the hands of anyone, really, I think.
Yeah, it applies to all ages, whether you've got primary school, secondary school, or college students. They all struggle logging on or navigating a directory structure in Windows. Just with Chrome OS, it's a lot simpler and easier, isn't it?
Oh, hang on, there we go. First ding bell. I wanted a bell sound effect for like the first IT technical language that was going to come clanging. A directory structure in Windows. Tell us what that is, Peter, and why is Chrome different?
Yeah, okay. So a directory structure, it's just files and folders. But a thing to keep in mind is our children growing up now, they're just used to tablets, aren't they? And used to web services. And you don't learn that stuff in school anymore. You just learn how to use a flat structure. You just use a search. You press the search key in a Chromebook, type in what you want, and it loads up. We don't really teach our students how to make a well-organized folder structure, how to file away all your old style Word documents and tuck away into folders. Everything's just search now, isn't it? And that's where Chromebooks fit in perfectly.
It's really interesting. Two things I picked up on there. One, starting off with the file structures. We had our Trust Training Day last week, and one of the videos that I created was just the very basics of using Google Drive for some of our admin staff, because they have been brought up on filing things away in sensible ways, and we kind of had to meet them halfway and say, well, this is how you can turn a folder different colors in Google Drive. They love that tip. For anybody who's not done that before, just changing the color, just right click on a folder and change color, and it just makes that organization so much more visible. And then they can start to organize themselves, and they can nest the folders if they want to. But I do remind them that this technology is built on the world's biggest search engine, so it should be able to search. And then we go into the options for searching your files in Google Drive at the top by narrowing it down by owner, by date, by file type. You really don't need that structure. The second point I wanted to pick up on there was around the touchscreen nature, because kids are brought up these days from being babies using touchscreen devices, and the first thing that they will do when you give a young child a Chromebook, if something's on screen, they'll try and scroll up on it like that, or scroll down on it, or scroll left or scroll right if they're into that kind of thing. But in reality, they expect touchscreens on all devices now, because they've been using their mums and dads' phones. And when we don't have them there, they're like, oh, this is a bit rubbish, there's no touchscreen. One thing that I've found, though, is that the more touchscreens you've got, the more screen cleaning you need to do, because they soon get very grubby, particularly in primary and secondary age students.
Yeah, I'm just laughing there because that's a job in our house that somebody has to do. Somebody has to clean the devices at the end of the weekend. They're only allowed them on the weekend. At the end of the weekend, the devices need cleaning. So yeah, that is somebody's job. I think though, when you said about the file structuring system, it did make me laugh, because there is a product called Google Workspace Skills that's available that you can buy from C Learning that Canopy have built, and in that you get an efficiency score when you search, and I think I have the worst efficiency scores going. I think I've got 42% in the Google Drive ones, and that's because I just search. I don't have any organization. I don't use any structure, because it does just keep it all to hand for me. So I'm probably guilty of like the messiest drive going, maybe.
That takes some doing, scoring only 42% on efficiency. I mean, when I first used that product, I was determined that I was going to get 100% on efficiency, and I was devastated when I didn't get it on my first pass. But I learned something through it, and that's what I love about it, is that it can teach from the novice to somebody who's been using it for a long number of years. I mean, I would never consider myself to be an expert. It's just setting yourself up for a fall, and you claim that, isn't it? But for somebody who's got a lot of experience, you can still learn things, and that's what I really loved about Canopy's offering, is that it really does teach everybody something, and it's always developing as well. That's the other thing. I mean, we might come on to that a little bit later with the admin panel, but it changes every single week. Every week we have numerous emails from Google about all the new features that are being released. So there's always something to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% with you on that. Yeah, I learned about file structures today. There's an example there. I really try and limit my knowledge of technical things because I don't want to be an expert in that. So I'm going to ask then about long battery life now. And I want to know, what are your experiences of it in large-scale deployments? Because I think when people invest in technology, they think, oh, it's fast startup and it's got this, it's got that. And over time, I think there is an expectation for things to decrease or to slow down. What are your experiences on that, and how important is a long battery life to you? Peter, I'll come to you first on that one.
Yeah, well, of course, it's essential, isn't it? So all of our teachers, they teach using a Chromebook as their primary device. And I think that, you know, all these Chromebooks get through the college day on a single charge. We don't actually have any chargers in the classrooms because, yeah, the teacher charges up the device overnight, and yeah, can use it all day. For our student devices, they're in trolleys. So each department has multiple trolleys, and again, they just get charged up overnight or a little top up between lessons. But yeah, even our oldest Chromebooks continue to function the whole college day, which I think is pretty impressive, really.
I think that's impressive, isn't it? Dave, sorry, go.
No, it's fine. I was very much going to agree with Peter on that. And I mean, full disclosure, we have had some visibility of some of the questions that you're going to ask us today, Sammy, for those people watching. But what we haven't done is actually speak to each other about what our answers are going to be, which is rare because Peter and I communicate quite frequently. But again, I'd noted exactly the same thing. It lasts the full school day. We used to have one department that demanded an extra set of charges for their laptops because the laptops wouldn't even last a double lesson, let alone a full school day. Now, as long as they're charged overnight, which is sometimes a little bit of a challenge with some staff, but as long as the devices are charged overnight, we have no concerns with them lasting through the full day. The other thing I'd say on it as well is that the claims made by the manufacturers of Chromebooks in terms of battery life are far more true life than what we see with laptops. You know, that claim of it will last 10 hours. You get those claims on a laptop as well, but very rarely will you actually see a laptop lasting that kind of length. I think it's like the VW emissions test, isn't it? That when you're claiming 12 hours, that's under very specific conditions. But I think both the longevity through the day and also the longevity over time, we don't see that drop off in battery capacity to anywhere near the same extent with Chromebooks as we did with laptops. And again, it may be just that battery technology has improved over time, but I think my experience is we still use some laptops in some areas of the trust, and we do still see that drop off. You know when a battery's got to a certain level, it falls off a cliff, and everybody is always having their laptop plugged into the mains when they're using it rather than just having it. It really does surprise me now when my Chromebook runs out of battery. I think it's happened 3 times, and that's only because I've been in the middle of some video editing or something that's really intensive, and I've not even remembered to plug it in because I don't plug my Chromebook in because it will last me all day. So yeah, those are my observations: longevity during the day and over time, you know, through the life of the product as well.
Yeah, and I've certainly experienced that. We bought a Windows laptop at the beginning of lockdown we needed a specific software, and it would only run on a Windows laptop anyway. We bought it, and I know we've been in a lot of lockdowns, but it's already dead, and it is fully dead. It won't turn on without being plugged in and on charge now. Whereas my Chromebook, when I came back off maternity leave 6 years ago, still going strong. And I don't know if it still does 10 hours, but it doesn't ever need plugging in while I'm working on it. So yeah, in our small little household, we can certainly see that too. We've got Abid watching, And Abid's put, I think he thinks the architecture of Chrome OS compared to Windows and Mac OS really helps to prolong the battery life. What are your thoughts on that, Peter?
Yeah, I think the point kind of Abid's alluding to there is the fact that Chrome OS is a lot more efficient in terms of the resources it's using. And in terms of the hardware going into Chromebooks, it's much lower power. It's not drawing kind of huge amounts of power from your battery just to display a web page, which a Windows laptop might be doing. And Chromebooks are really designed with efficiency in mind there, which I think, yeah, like Abid said, does help a lot.
I think the other thing as well is that with Chromebooks, so much of what they do is handed off to the web. It is a web browsing tool first and foremost, and therefore it doesn't need as much processing power because it's not doing as much locally as a laptop or a MacBook would traditionally be doing. They tend to do the bulk of their work locally, whereas a Chromebook hands off its work to the cloud, which in effect is somebody else's computer, isn't it? So somebody else's computer is doing all the work for you here and using all that processing power. So what's needed locally on a Chromebook is significantly lower, and therefore they tend to wear out less and they tend to last longer, both in terms of battery and in terms of the device components as well.
Yeah, Abby's just come in as well. He's agreeing with you both there, so that's good. We've got another IT manager that agrees. I'm feeling I'm learning lots. I'm learning all the lingo. I've got more lingo now for you in this next question. Bear with, and it's about centralized management. I mean, saying the words. What makes centralized management simple, and why does that work for you? Peter, I'll come to you with that one first.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So I think, like I mentioned earlier, Google really designed Chromebooks and the tools which we use to manage Chromebooks with education in mind. So, I mean, I guess let's talk through a life cycle for Chromebook. So we get a Chromebook delivered to our college. Me or one of my team, we unbox that Chromebook and we turn it on for the first time. And then the first thing we do is join it to our Wi-Fi and then press Control-Alt-E. And the special thing about that key combo is it will join it onto our Google domain. And as soon as it joins our Google domain, we don't need to worry about that device anymore. It's going to get all of its policies and settings. So the things we're using to control what students can access on that Chromebook and how it behaves, it gets all that automatically from the admin console. And I forget exactly how many policies are now in the admin console. I think it's like something like 500, but you can literally customize Chrome OS however much you want to whatever extent you want to, and yeah, make it a really kind of a tight user experience for your students and staff on Chrome.
For a complete novice, that sounds really simple. Like I could probably do that. So
it's simple. That's why I think all IT teams should really embrace Chrome OS in the admin console, because it saves, as I'm sure Dave would agree, it saves so much work, because we've added something like, we've got 1,800 Chromebooks now. That's all in addition to our other devices, and my team is the same size. So we've added all of these extra devices without actually creating that much more workload.
Yeah, I think for anybody who's either using a Chromebook now or has access to one, an indication of just how many policies are pushed out, it's really simple for you to see. If you just type into your Omnibox, there's a new term for it for some of you as well who may be looking for picking up technical terms. So that's your address bar at the top. If you just type in Chrome://policy, you will see a list of all the policies that have been pulled down to your Chromebook. Particularly if you want the checkbox, and I think it's in the top right-hand corner that says show policies with 0 value set. So you'll see hundreds and hundreds of policies that as Peter said there, we set up once. And yes, we have to manage them when new features are released by Google, but we tend to set them up once. We set them up, they're granular. That's the key for me. These are granular policies, so I can set them up for one group of users or one group of devices, and it pulls down automatically, and it is very, very simple. I mean, what Abid's saying there that's on screen about it being so much more seamless, I absolutely agree. I think just the way that the Active Directory group policy settings are presented on screen it almost feels as though you've got to have an IT degree to understand them, just because of the presentation of it. Whereas with Chrome, like everything else, it's nice and rounded edges, it's uniform colors, it feels user friendly, and I think, having taken apprentices through learning how to configure both Microsoft devices and Apple devices and Chrome devices, they all lean to the Chrome one, because the management console just feels like an extension of all the other Chrome tools that are used. So yeah, for me, that granularity, the easy visibility from the device. If you do have a problem, and I can't remember the last time I did, I can pick up a device, I can type that simple command in, and it will show me all the policies that are there, and importantly, when it last checked in to get its policies, because that's normally the issue when a Chromebook loses connectivity for whatever reason and isn't pulling down those policies. So it's very, very simple, both from the end device perspective and from the admin panel perspective, to see what's going on in your domain. Yeah, and again, we can do these things with Windows, we can do these things with macOS, but the simplicity is the key thing for me, and it's cloud-based, so it doesn't matter where your device is. We don't have to say staff you need to bring them into school or into college or anything like that to get it to pull its updates down. It just works, which, you know, is another good shout out to Abid's little Google project there. It just works is a very key component of what he's doing.
Yeah, completely. I think I learned a lot in there, and I think I started to get a bit of understanding on it. I very, very, very little, but yeah, I think this is making a lot of sense to me. In terms of cost savings, then, because if someone's going to invest in devices, and you've told everyone this is great, what does it look like from a cost point of view, going Chrome and Chromebooks versus traditional MacBooks and Windows devices? Peter, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, excluding the cost of device, first of all, as you know, Dave and I both IT managers. You know, we also got to think about all the other systems in the background which are needed just to make Windows or Mac devices work. So all those extra servers to manage those policies, file servers, so users have got somewhere to store stuff. Various, you know, other systems within our kind of school or college buildings, just there to just make Windows function. But with Chrome OS, you don't have any of those worries, because, as we said earlier, it's cloud-based, so the admin console doesn't require you to set up a server to make that work. That's just available there on a web page. You know, you just need, as long as you've got good Wi-Fi and an internet connection, you're sorted. And in terms of the devices themselves, they're priced very competitively. You know, but you can get a Chromebook for less than £200, and you know that's still a good device. It's very fast. It boots up in seconds, and you know, if it's on the web, you can do it on your Chromebook. But now you can also get Chromebooks at any price point, from, you know, starting from 200 up to £1,000 if you want to, and get like the very most powerful Chromebook in the world. And yeah, there's a huge range of devices out there now. So yeah, and in terms of cost savings for the college, I've never worked out exactly, but I know if we were still refreshing devices based on our old refresh cycle of replacing a certain number of Windows devices every year, there's no way we could afford to do that anymore, especially considering the college is growing a lot in those years. We would never have been able to keep up with our refresh cycle if it weren't for bringing in Chrome OS and Chromebooks in the classroom. Yeah,
I think that was one of the ways that I approached it when we first started using Chromebooks. Some people in any organization will always be reluctant to change. You know, familiarity means a lot to some people, so you've almost got to get over the hurdles of why should we go down this route. And we've talked about the battery life and the speed of boot and the fact that it logs straight into the Google account, so they've got access to the documents immediately. But the other thing that really won people over is saying, right, okay, we can either buy you 30 laptops or we can buy you 60 Chromebooks. How does that work out? And that's purely on device purchase price. and they are cheaper because they have fewer components inside them, which again is why they tend to fail less. So they are cheaper because they don't need as much inside them to work. I mean, we still use Microsoft devices, we still use Apple devices. I'm a big believer in not putting all my eggs in one basket and using the right tool for the right purpose. But overwhelmingly now we've gone from being massively Windows to leaning more towards Apple to hugely Chrome OS based, because they just work. It just works. Back to Abid's comment again. They just work. They are simple to manage. They are really, really powerful in terms of how the devices function for learners, and it's not just that as well. The components, when something does need replacing, if a keyboard fails or if you get a damaged screen, it's really simple then to replace the components, and the components are low cost as well. And when you combine that with the fact that we have less vandalism in the first place, the fact that we need fewer boxes in the server room that are still need feeding with electricity all the time, it really does show up a significant cost saving.
Yeah, and this is my next point. Thanks for that, both of you. It was great. My next point then is we're all trying to be that little bit more greener. And I don't think we're going to ever escape the chip and what goes into making the devices. But in terms of an organisation, is there any way that we become a bit greener when we go Chrome OS and we go Chromebooks? I'm thinking in my little thought process, if they're not on charge all the time, surely that's a better thing. But I'm sure there's more technical ways that it affects it. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, well, like we just said, not having always extra servers in the server room sat there drawing power 24/7. That's definitely helping our green credentials. The fact that we've been able to reduce the number of servers we've got sat there drawing power. And I also think that our Chromebooks, at least from our prior experience with other kinds of laptops, they're lasting longer, so we're not having to refresh these devices so often. So yeah, there's another big saving there for the planet, really.
Yeah, because I think it's sometimes the hidden costs of your server room as well. Yes, you've got to charge devices, and if we have to charge them less, that's great. But like I alluded to in my previous answer, we've also got to power servers. And servers are big boxes of lots of spinning disks and flashing lights and beepy things. That's some more technical terminology for you there, Sammy. But they generate a lot of heat. So most server rooms will have air conditioning in there. And when you've got air conditioning, that's a terrible, terrible impact on the environment. That's one of the biggest things that uses a load of energy, cools down a local area and heats up what's outside. So it's not a great thing for the environment, isn't that at all? But also, we don't need as many spare parts, so we're not buying as much, and we're not buying as much both financially and therefore consuming as much in terms of rare metals and in terms of plastics and so on and so forth that go into making computers. So I think that fewer servers needed, because I personally don't think I'll ever get to the stage where I'm zero server. Maybe not in my IT career anyway, because I'll always be nervous about what if. And that nervousness comes from, well, what if the internet goes down? But what I'm finding is, because I'm spending less on my servers, which has less impact on the environment, I can spend a little bit more on my internet connection. So I get a faster internet connection, and I get greater resilience built into that. So I've got two pipes coming into the building now instead of one, because if one of them gets hit by a digger or somebody doing some roadworks, I've got a backup in place. And I could never afford that when I was spending significant amounts of money on my server infrastructure.
Wow, I hadn't pictured that at all completely. Yeah, with you 100%. What I know about servers is that they are a potential place where you could have a security risk as well. So if you've got less of those, then surely that's a good thing too, Dave. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cybersecurity is at the forefront of everybody's mind, isn't it? Recently in education, there's directives going out from the DFE. Every trust CEO and every school head teacher will have received communication saying you need to be asking questions about your cybersecurity, and I think Jamie Smith has often stated the fact that there is actually a reward available from Google for anybody who manages to infect a Chromebook with a virus. Nobody's ever done it. So, you know, they are inherently more secure. I mean, I think that we might come on to security a little bit later, so I won't go into that too much at this stage. But yeah, there are so many things that when you start to look a bit deeper and a little bit under the surface of your potential savings, you can really leverage some examples of, you know, as Abid's saying there, you can save tens of thousands of pounds quite easily outside of the cost of the devices.
Yeah, Abid's on a roll. He's coming back again. The hardware itself, time cost, personal having to manage and maintain these systems. So like you said, Peter, your college has grown massively, but your team has remained quite small, and you've been able to do that because you've gone Chrome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've never had to increase the size of our IT team because Chromebooks are so much easier to manage. And just on the security, just a fun factor, Chromebooks have never been a victim of a ransomware attack. Ransomware is one of the things which keeps IT managers like Dave and myself feeling up at night, but we can sleep slightly better knowing that most of our device fleet are Chromebooks, and we've never been hit by ransomware.
Yeah, and I was actually talking to an organisation this morning who was hit with a ransomware attack Monday or Tuesday. I've worked in an organisation that's had a ransomware attack. They are not nice things to be the victim of, and it's thrown everything out. This organisation I was talking to this morning, they had lost everything, and they were struggling to get Microsoft Teams to work, and so they had to do our meeting. We did it on mobile phones, on WhatsApp video calls, on personal mobile phones. So, you know, a ransomware attack will bring that level of, you know, upset to your organization.
I mean, we can't afford to be complacent. You know, there are still attacks that are happening that are targeting organizations' cloud-based infrastructures as well. We've got a school local to us that was attacked approximately 2 weeks ago, and they still don't have any of their services up and running, neither the cloud-based or the local servers. They're proper extensively hit by ransomware. And I just feel terribly sorry for them. But what it should do, it should prompt us to review our own setup. They weren't a Google school, and I think this is, I'm not saying that they were hit because they weren't a Google school. I suspect that Google schools have been hit in the same way, but because of the way they were set up, their cloud accounts were also compromised. So they had every single user's cloud account and local account absolutely inaccessible to them. So it makes me fear for what happens if we get hit with that. And the advice to those people viewing and listening today will be overwhelmingly just make sure that you've got what's called an Airbrake Backup. So that's something that we're introducing now. We used to back up from one server to another server to Google Drive, to the cloud. But if there's that mechanism that's in place all the time, they can infect all the way up. So having that break where you've got no connectivity to something whatsoever is massively important. So I think complacency is definitely going to be our enemy when it comes to cybersecurity. So constant training. You know, every single year we need to be training our staff because they're always the weak point. You know, we can put policies in place, we can put systems in place to protect ourselves, but it's always going to be the human factor that is the weak point. Bringing in two-factor authentication, and I know that Peter's dealt with this extensively, so I'll skip on that and let him talk about that in a moment. But there are many things that can be done to improve the security, and you know, thankfully Chromebooks are compatible with these methodologies as well. You know, the fact that they're encrypted as standard is hugely important for a GDPR perspective. And yeah, that would be my number one tip. Introduce two-factor authentication for your significant accounts. So that's your IT staff, your school and trust leaders, your financial staff, and so on and so forth. Peter, do you want to explain about two-factor authentication?
Yeah, so it's something we introduced a year or two ago, and essentially it uses adds an extra layer of security to your Google account, for instance. So you'd use another token, let's say. So that could be your smartphone. It could be a physical security key. I've got one here attached to my lanyard. So this is a YubiKey, which I purchased from C Learning. And many of our staff have got one of these keys. And yeah, so when our staff sign into a device, they get prompted for their second factor of authentication. So they either get a message sent to their phone or they pop in a security key and sign in. So it doesn't take that much longer, but it adds a huge amount more security to your account, because then if someone does compromise your password, without that extra token, they can't access your account.
Yeah, and
so
I think
I highly recommend turning that on.
And the cost is not insignificant. I mean, for a single one of these YubiKeys, you're probably looking about £20, which if you're to roll out all in one across all of your staff in your organisation, could be significant. And I've heard people say in the past, well, we can't afford that. Well, can you afford to be hit by a cyber attack? Because the cost will be significantly higher if you are, not just in financial costs, but in data costs, in the loss of reputation. All these things really add up to it. So please, that's my plea to anybody watching, take cybersecurity seriously, because it's just a horrible experience to go through if you were to be hit. And if you've got simple solutions like these, you're almost a fool not to roll them out.
Yeah, fascinating. Like I say, I've worked in an organisation that was hit, and then I was talking to an organisation today, and it's just devastating. I think the harshest story I heard in one organisation was a member of staff who brought her wedding photos, and she'd just got married, and she'd just put them on her drive to order her canvas prints, and she ordered her prints, and then the cyber attack happened, and they were gone. So yeah, that's as all the learning that can happen, but that's as genuinely as heartbreaking as it can be. I'm guessing then, in my non-knowledgeable brain, automatic updates play a part in keeping things fresh and secure and all those sorts of things. Peter, before I mess up the lingo, what's the impact of automatic updates of Chrome and Chromebooks that you're seeing?
We don't have to worry about it. It just happens, which keeps your device a lot more secure, because you always know that our fleet of Chromebooks are bang up to date and they're getting updates themselves. We don't need to be managing those updates. We don't need to have to, like we said earlier, manage a separate server just for sending out updates, which you do with other types of OS. So that is one big headache kind of removed from the IT department. And it also means that, during lockdown, for instance, when all of our Chromebooks went to students and staff at home, they were still getting their updates at home, even though they couldn't talk to our school servers. Because they don't need to. They just go off and get their updates straight from the internet. And the great thing about Chrome OS updates is they're really fast. So it will download the update while you're using it. You wouldn't even be aware of it. And then the next time you restart your Chromebook, it gets applied. So it's that simple, really. Which is a joy for IT departments.
Yeah, I think it's also, as you've alluded to there, Peter, it's transparent to the end user. You're not having people who are just about to deliver a key presentation and waiting for the laptop to start up and it says applying Windows update. This may take some time, and that definition of some time in Microsoft language can be anything from a picosecond to an eon. It's really frustrating when you hit that situation. The most that most users will recognize that Chrome is being updated or needs updating or needs a restart is a little upward pointing arrow in the top right hand side of their browser. When you see that, if you wonder what it means just restart and everything will be taken care of for you. For me, yeah, from a server side of things, in terms of the Google admin panel, sorry, rather than the server, it's just set up once and you leave it to it. You know that you're protected from those zero-day threats. It's more about new features for me. So updates have gone from being a pain in the backside to, ooh, what are we getting this time? And we get that email through, like I said earlier, numerous times per week from Google with what today's updates are. The only frustration for me now is the fact that things are updated so frequently that they move around in the admin panel and I've got to try and find them, and any documentation that I create or any videos that I create for my staff, they're out of date so quickly because the product is evolving and developing all the time. And if that's the biggest problem I've got with updates, that's not a bad place to be in.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? In the olden days, you, as a teacher, you would be like, oh, this software needs an update because I need this feature. And you would plead and beg the IT department to come force that update on your devices. And you'd have to arrange a time when you weren't using your devices for them to come into the room to then force the updates. And then there'd be one device that didn't work. And the next day when you come in your room, you'd find one of the IT team like, hi, I'm just finishing your updates. You're like, oh, I'm teaching. And you'd have that. And that's, from a teacher's point of view, that's how it happened. I'm sure it was very different from your point of view, but that was the impact, was that sometimes teaching would be held back by waiting for these updates, and we just don't have to wait anymore, which is wonderful from a teaching point of view, because we can just get on with things and get people learning again, which is what we're there to do at the end of the day, isn't it? So we've touched on security. I just want to check, is there anything else that you wanted to add on security, for how using Chrome and Chromebooks support your key security priorities at college, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the fact that we've shifted, many of our staff and students onto Chrome OS, it's just helped kind of lower kind of our kind of security profile. So, the kind of what we're presenting to attackers, which could be used to compromise college systems. But Chromebook specifically, I don't know, have you ever heard of a term when talking about Chrome? It's called defense in depth. So it's kind of Google's approach really to how they've designed Chromebooks. So you've got automatic updates for one thing, which we've just discussed. So that makes sure you've always got the latest version of Chrome OS and the most secure version of Chrome OS on your Chromebook. It's something called Sandboxing. So every web page, every app you're running on your Chromebook gets put into a separate sandbox, which means it can't interact with anything else on your Chromebook. So if you did get compromised by a piece of malware, it's very hard for that to escape that sandbox and infect your whole Chromebook. But even if it does, every time you switch on your Chromebook, it does a check on your operating system, so Chrome OS, to make sure it's running the correct version and it's not been altered or compromised in any way. And then if it has, it automatically resets that to its last known good version and wipes out that potential threat for you. And I think the last thing there, if I've not missed anything, is encryption. So anything on your Chromebook, and it's probably not going to be that much on your Chromebook because it's all getting saved up to the cloud anyway, but anything that is local to your Chromebook is all encrypted. So even if you did forget your Chromebook on a train and then someone got hold of it and managed to get through your password, through your somehow, I don't know how, your two-factor authentication, then everything is still encrypted on your Chromebook anyway. So it's really reassuring to IT managers, having such secure devices used by most of our users.
Yeah, I think that one thing just to extend on that as well, and that sandbox principle that you mentioned there, Peter, that's one of the features of the enhanced license, isn't it, for education? The Google for Education enhanced license allows you to sandbox every single email that's received, which again is reducing that attack vector, and that defends you not just on your Chrome boxes but on other devices as well. So we've said that viruses aren't necessarily an issue on Chrome boxes and Chromebooks, but they can still be on Windows or Mac devices, predominantly Windows, because that's where the greatest market share is, so that's where people write viruses for. But if you've got that enhanced license for your education domain within Google, then you can turn on a setting to sandbox every single email that's sent. So if there's an attachment or anything untoward within an email, even nowhere near your domain or your environment, it is run, it's opened, and it's tested for any malicious code before your end user even receives that email. So that's something else, that's an extra layer of protection that's not specific to Chromebooks, but is another service provided through Google. the things for me that it protects us against, it helps us so much with safeguarding. Everything's logged, so we can go back. I've got a slightly contentious thing that I say within my staff training, saying that the best kind of bullying is cyberbullying, because it leaves a trail. It leaves something for us to have a black and white evidential trail of saying, you did say that and he did say that, and this is a reality of it. Whereas if it's whispers in the playground, we don't know in reality what's gone on. So everything's logged. It helps with safeguarding. As Peter said, it helps with encryption, which is a massive part of our GDPR strategy. You know, we don't let devices go off-site unless they're encrypted. It happens as standard on a Chromebook, so that takes away a massive headache for us. And from physical security perspective, if a device does go missing, then we can disable it at the click of a button through the admin panel. It's one of those things that Chromebook is absolutely useless. When we disable it, nobody else can use it. They can't deprovision it. They can't log it onto another system. They can do nothing with it. It is just an absolute lump of plastic and metal for them. So there's no point in stealing.
I love that. It's just a big lump of plastic or metal. Fab. Okay, so originally this event came from a tweet that I put out, and I wanted people's top tips. So we're going to quickly have a quick round robin, Dave and Peter. We're going to flash through a couple of these tweets, and we're just going to get your thoughts on a quick summary on why people have this opinion and what you think of it as well. So we've got my friend Nick up first, who's more ideas the merrier. He says, simple, nothing extraneous, great battery life, no faff. I think that should be what they put on the box. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I'm not sure that Google are big users of the word faff, but I definitely agree with the sentiment there. I think the simplicity is definitely one of the strengths of a Chromebook, and when you marry that with great battery life, what's not to like?
Absolutely, absolutely. And then we have the nicest man in EdTech, I think everyone agrees, Al, and he talks about simple centralized management, a nice low price point per device. Peter, what do you think? Is Al on the money there?
Absolutely, like we discussed earlier, the admin console is every IT manager's kind of dream console, really. It doesn't get better than that.
Awesome. And then Abid, and he's watching, so thank you, Abid, for contributing. He's put easy to set up and manage, super fast, and there's no issues with long, convoluted update processes. They're low in cost and a great starting point for getting devices into the hands of children to give them a great start to EdTech. Dave, that must speak to your heart.
Absolutely, you know me, Sammy. I'm all about saving money. If it's whether it's my money or whether it's the taxpayers' money.
I meant getting devices in the hands of children.
No, it's about saving money. And if we can do that whilst getting devices into the hands of children and enabling them to access the curriculum, and the last 2 years have shown us just how important that is, haven't they? You know, it's really, really key. If we can enable them in the digital world to be able to learn in a modern way and to take advantage of all the wonderful tools that are available, that's got to be a good thing. And yeah, Abid hits a nail on the head there. He follows up his reputation for being a man who is a man of many words. I'm just surprised that he's not posted a selfie of himself on there with a Chromebook whilst he's been sending that.
And this one from Shane, I genuinely think this could go on the box, Peter. Affordable, secure, and super easy to manage.
Yeah, absolutely agree with all that. And the only thing I'd add there is just, really easy to use. It's why I use a Chromebook as my main device. There's just nothing to get in the way of doing work, really. You just log on and off you go. Yeah,
and I'll just say I'm on a Chromebox. That's what I use. Dave, what are you on? Let the side down.
I'm going to have to be honest. I could say normally I would be on my Chromebook, but because I'm in the office, I'm on a Windows device. But my Chromebook is never. It's like rats in London. I'm never more than 6 feet away from my Chromebook.
And my Chromebox, if people are watching, I would describe it really badly. But Peter, could you describe what a Chromebox is for people who might not know the difference?
Yeah, sure. I don't actually have one in here, but it is a very small box-shaped device. But you can just take plug your Chromebox into your screen, keyboard or mouse, and you've got Chromebook experience on a desktop then. It's got all the same benefits of Chrome OS, so automatic updates. It's really secure and easy to use, but you can easily plug it into a big screen, keyboard and mouse, and have that kind of traditional desktop setup. And you can even get a Chromebase. So a few companies, there's not many now, but HP, for instance, they've just put out a new Chromebase, which is effectively an all-in-one Chrome device, so for your desktop.
Yeah, I've had a Chromebase before, and it's essentially just like a big touch screen, and that's it. You have one plug that goes into the wall, which is the power, and that's it. Everything is in there. So if you're not a fan of wires, a Chromebase might be an option for you. I did feel like I needed to stand up when I used it. I don't know why. I just felt like it felt like a stand-up device, like I should be pointing at it or things like that. I think it's the size of them, maybe. But my Chrome box, it gives you that, like you say, that traditional desktop feel for those people who maybe don't want the keys of a Chromebook because the keyboard is slightly different. They might not want that, and they might want a traditional keyboard. You can obviously plug one into a Chromebook, but you might want that more desktop feel. Dave, you're going to like this with what Abid's put now.
Yeah, I've been waiting to get this in, and thank you once again, Abid. I feel as though Abid should have been part of this discussion, and in many ways he has been. He's just via text rather than speaking, and it's such a shame because he's a good-looking fella. But Neverware is your solution. That's something that people can consider. To Neverware provide a piece of software called Cloud Ready that allows you to convert old devices, so those old laptops, those old Windows machines, those old MacBooks. We've even had it working on a MacBook. I'm not sure how officially that supported that is, but it allows you to run Chrome OS on a non-Chrome device, and quite often the reality of that is that it extends the life of that device. So for a very small price, you've got your Chrome license and your Neverware license, which will allow you to run an old, failing, slow laptop in the same way as a Chromebook runs, in that it uses far less resources. It offsets all those resources to the internet, and really can extend the life. So if you can't afford new Chromebooks, then Neverware is a great option. If you can afford new Chromebooks, then I've just seen in the chat, get in touch with sales at Sea Learning, and I'm sure they'll help you out. They're very, very nice people.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me about never wearing is that I have personally managed to never wear a laptop, and I think I've shown in this chat, if I can personally manage to do something, then it must be a very, very simple process for people to manage.
And the personal version of Neverware is free as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So it's something that people can do at home on their old laptops that have been stuck in the cupboard for 3 years. Give it a go, and if somebody can manage it, then anybody can.
Yeah, and I think if we're thinking about those green credentials as well, if you do have that lump of plastic sat at home, why not give it a new life? If you don't know someone in need, I'm sure there is someone in need as well. Guys, can't believe it. We've come to the end of the chat. It's absolutely flown. Huge thank you for joining us today on this. I feel like I've learned lots. I still don't understand many of the lingo, but I think that's okay because I know you two and you're the experts. So I'll just ring you two up and ask my questions like I constantly do anyway of why does this not work? But thank you very much for your contributions. You've been true gents and superstars as usual.
Thanks, Sammy. Good opportunity to share and to talk with you and Peter as always, and with the good people who are watching.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us on. It's been great to chat and talk about my favourite topic, Chromebooks. Yeah,
literally when you put Peter's name in Twitter, that's what comes up. So everyone's going to go do that now. Peter's going to get thousands of new followers. Thank you very much, guys. I'm just going to pop you off. So thank you for joining us today on this Sea Learning webinar. And we have another one next week when we are talking all about accessibility. And hopefully you'll be able to join us then. Until then, bye.